What's going on, guys? Back again with another episode of Mydawgplace. And today I have Miss Onix here again, and she is going to assist me in talking about what the basic things are when bringing home a new dog. Obviously it depends on person to person, but here are a few things that I would recommend that you guys keep in mind. So one of the first things I would recommend is make sure that you put a lot of stock into proper introductions. So that's not just proper introductions between dogs, but also proper introductions between you and them. Typically a peace offering will help. You can try to give them a treat, see how they are with you, touching them, giving them affection, sharing their personal space, and likewise, how do they feel about sharing that space and being touched and sniffed by other dogs? This will give you a lot of information about the dog so that you kind of know, hey, look, do I need to work on building my dog's confidence up? Should I maybe work on their impulse control because they're too friendly or too excitable? It's really good to know right off the bat. Another thing that I would consider you look into is, well, where are you going to keep your dog? Onix, crate. Up, up. I always like to make the example of, it's a baby's crib. We put the baby in the baby crib, not so that we don't have to deal with the baby, but so that the baby, while they're sleeping or we're doing something else, is in a safe place that we can account for them. When we, for example, go out of town and go stay at the Hilton or the Marriott, they don't just have all of the guests hanging out in the lobby. We're separating the dogs based off of family, based off of temperament, based off of genetics, whatever. Another thing we should consider is what kind of leash are we going to be using with our dog? Well, if it's an older dog, you may have to move straight into a slip lead or a prong collar. Another important part would be lifestyle. We want to make sure that we're integrating the dog into our lifestyle. You want to do like random stuff with them, right? Sometimes part of the training is just doing everyday things and letting the dogs hang out around you and just experience that routine. Well, you'll see Zeus over here, for example. He's getting a little bit worked up because Onix has come to visit. Nothing wrong with that, but I do want to desensitize him and I do want to get him comfortable with hanging out and experiencing another dog around here while he's hanging out in the crate. And again, he goes and he switches off. Sort of back to our crate point, if he was out of the crate, he'd be all over the place maybe. And he'd be reinforcing behaviors that I don't want. He'd be jumping up on Onix or riling Onix up. So now I have two dogs that are reinforcing behaviors that I don't really want. Proper introduction to lifestyle, to routine is very key. And then one of the steps that I think is super, super important is going to be trying to figure out what motivates your dog. Finding out what is going to get your dog going and willing to work for is going to be super awesome and going to be super helpful so that you can start building on that and give the dog some sort of way of interacting with you, but also start building up a reward that you can use for training and stuff like that, right? But it's not always so standard. Some dogs will do anything for food. Some dogs need to play with toys, or some dogs don't even like either. And some dogs just like affection, and they take more stock into social experiences as opposed to like exercising. So I hope that helps, guys. And a couple honorable mentions before we get out of here. I would recommend setting clear boundaries. So, for example, if you don't like your dog jumping up on your bed or on the couch, these are things that are good to set right off the bat. You don't want them to counter surf. Stop while you're seasoning your chicken, for example. Get them a little raw chicken right off the cutting board, right? This will definitely get them accustomed to asking for these things or give them the expectation that they're gonna get the food, right? And this will just make them a little bit more persistent moving forward. Also, I would recommend train your guest on how they should interact with your dog. There is a such thing as over-socialization. if we give a dog too much socialization or too much incorrect socialization, this could get them used to, one, being very frightened and overwhelmed every time they see somebody or dogs, or get overly excited when they see other people or other dogs. And either one is not good. So it's the two extremes, right? They get a little bit too scared because it's too much going on, or they get a little bit too excited because there's too much going on. Anyways, guys, appreciate you for sticking around, and thank you for supporting the coolest dog trainer on YouTube. I'll catch you guys on the next one.